to actually to serve everybody's interest.
Okay. Angie Tingus, your thoughts on dog parks?
Dog parks are great, and I actually believe Ward 30 is a very large dog-owning ward, and I think beautifying and gentrifying the park would be important, because the problem is getting Parks and Recs to keep all the parks, not just Withrow Park, as beautifully maintained as they should be. That saying, just today there was 5 maintenance workers cleaning an empty social housing home in my neighborhood, that is empty, that's been empty for 3 years, when they could have been cleaning a park that's used by more citizens, such as dog owners.
All right.
So if they fix that, it would be much more improved.
Gary Walsh, we need to hear your thoughts on dog parks.
Well, Liz hit it right on the nose. Dogs and people at all hours of the night make a safer environment. Now, I would advise if you're walking in Withrow Park that you take a notebook with you and you get the names and the addresses of other dog owners, and you have a meeting. You organize at the local level, you find like-minded people. I would photograph the area. I'd put pressure on the Works Department, but as a novel concept is that it might be an idea to look at fences in other areas and put your own bids out to fencing companies and ask them how much. A novel concept in this city. But take the initiative, go to fencing companies and get some prices so you can go to the Works Department and say, we're a group of people, this is the problem, this is our evidence, take your evidence, take your bids, and find a way to do it that's cost effective.
All right. Here's a question directed to Paula Fletcher, but I'll get everybody to comment on it. It's from Mark in Ward 30. And it says, my question to Paula Fletcher is, does she believe it's all right to berate a constituent for asking questions on how city council spend their own taxpayer dollars? I guess he is referring to the John Smith incident, perhaps?
John Smith from, I think, Etobicoke, not from Ward 30. I certainly did apologize to Mr. Smith for our exchange. I think that our constituents in Ward 30 understand the importance of services. And this was an exchange where we were being asked to simply cut the budget indiscriminately. And I think it's important that those who want to cut, and there are those who want to cut quite severely in this election, indicate where they think things should be cut. And I don't think there's actually a lot of fat. I do believe we can have efficiencies, but I feel strongly, I think everybody knows about children's breakfast programs, about aiding the poor, about transit staying affordable, and I'm not sure those are areas where I know I certainly won't support cutting in those areas, and I'd like to hear if other candidates think that those are areas to cut.
I think the question isn't necessarily about cutting a specific item. It's more about the attitude of beratement and whether or not when these things, because they do become emotional from time to time, how far should a councillor be going in going toe-to-toe or head-to-head with a long-suffering taxpayer?
Well,
whether they're from Etobicoke or next door.
Well, as I said, that I think every councillor, and if someone's going to be elected from Ward 30 on the 25th, will find that there's times when things get quite emotional, as you've said. And I think Councillor Ford has certainly had moments when he's been very emotional, and all the mayor candidates have. So
why not the
politics can be
councillors?
quite emotional.
All right. Okay.
And I think what's important is to own up to it, not lie that you didn't do it, say, yes, I did that, and apologize for it, which I have,
Which
Dale.
is what you did.
That's just what I did.
Mark Dewdney, what kind of deportment should a councillor have? Should there be those kinds of emotional arguments? Is that part of what happens when you're a councillor? How do you feel about that?
First thing I'll say is that there is no question this is a passionate position. If you're not a passionate person about your community, there's no reason for you to be involved in this. Absolutely none. However, for $100,000 a year, you'd better get $101,000 worth of support and service and good comportment. And quite frankly, I guess Councillor Fletcher had to know that the question was coming at some point, and she's prepared herself. quite frankly, it was one of the
Well, that's
reasons
what
why I
it means to
ran.
have a political track record, I guess,
got
right?
it.
Because it's always questioned as you go along.
So in the end, you deserve some better service. You deserve a better way of saying things, a better way of saying, look, I'm passionate about this issue, et cetera. That sort of thing, unfortunately, we've seen other senses of entitlement. Councillor Vaughan, for example, we've seen some in the ward next to us in Ward 32 with Councillor Busson. This sort of thing, unfortunately, does appear to be a systemic problem, and we do need some people who are going to go above, beyond, and prove the fact that they really will listen respectfully, no matter what your political ideology is. I don't care if you show up wearing an I Hate Mark Dewdney t-shirt the day after I'm elected. I've still got to listen to you. $100,000 worth. I'll have them printed if you want. There you go.
Just kidding. Gary Walsh, how would you handle that? Faced with an emotional situation, where do you say in your own mind, stop, I'm not going any farther here, when you're dealing with constituents and emotional issues?
Well, my experience in my life, whether I've been a private investigator, the client was my boss. Whether I was representing somebody in court, the client was my boss. And when I was treating a patient, the patient was my boss. And I took those roles very, very seriously. And as a counselor, I would never, ever berate a taxpayer. And most importantly, in my training in my life, you never lose your cool. No matter what someone says to you, you never lose your cool. Because if you're a policeman or even a paramedic, losing your cool can cost you your life. You're not going to, I don't think a constituent is going to strangle you. But if I'm elected, you will be my boss. I'm working for you, you're not working for me.
Andrew James, what are your thoughts on that, on the behavior of councillors?
Well, I think in terms of what Paula says, the costs of where do you cut, where do you make the cuts, we have to recognize the pain of taxpayers. It basically takes a month. You have to work a month of your salary to pay your property taxes in the city. So you're working a month for the city. And that has to be respected. When you increase taxes, that causes pain, especially to those on fixed incomes. So we have to balance the good things that the city does, and I certainly, as I describe myself as a progressive, but I also am fiscally responsible, and I know the value of a dollar. And in dealing with these sorts of situations, sure, emotions may run high, but I think it starts with the premise that you have respect for the concerns of the person you're dealing with. If they're asking for services, you respect that, because some people are less fortunate than ourselves and have to ask for services. If they're paying for the services by virtue of being taxpayers, you have to respect that. And there's nothing to get emotional in that situation, because taxpayers have a right to accountability. They have a right to understand what it is, where their money's going.